Hey everybody, your old pal Shawn here. We got a great episode for you today. In this one, we're going to cover not a divisive issue, but we're going to work on sharing a concept that's extraordinarily powerful. There is a phrase, one drop of insight can save you tremendous suffering, and that's what we're going to cover today. This understanding, when applied and mastered, has helped people during the Holocaust, being locked in gulags, being on death row, being a prisoner of war, being a slave, and in combat in the worst conditions that a person can find themselves in. It's so simple, but it's not easy. This concept has been used as a shelter for people in the darkest days of their lives for thousands of years. It's been spoken about by emperors, philosophers, politicians, slaves, soldiers, and the everyday working people just trying to get by. That's why I like this, and that's why I want to share it with you, because once you master this, once you really develop this, and I'm not claiming to be the greatest practitioner in the world, but once you get a grasp of this and start to let its power affect your life, it doesn't matter what path you walk. I'm not trying to share something controversial. I'm not trying to get you to deviate from your most cherished beliefs. I'm helping you to utilize an understanding that's going to make you a better practitioner of whatever path you find yourself on. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. All right, Shawn, what is this insight? What could be so powerful? What is so useful? What's going to change my life? And as soon as I begin to describe it, many people would write it off because it's so simple. It's familiar. It's something that's been heard before. But there's a big difference in understanding that you get from, hearing a phrase and making it an automatic function of your life. There's an ancient quote that says, "We do not rise to the occasion. Instead, we sink to the level of our training," which means whatever way you've been living. Let's take a sport example. However you've been practicing, if you're just going through the motions, more or less doing the same types of exercises over and over again, you might not improve. You're just gonna get through it. And that's not going to increase your level. But if every time you're working on something specific and you have a measurable objective and you're really paying attention and you're doing your best to execute that maneuver into sport, over time you're going to gain new insights. Over time your movement's going to be more precise. And eventually, this new level is going to be part of how you naturally show up. But if you've just been going through the motions, well, then that's going to reflect in your training. In a practical sense, this rises up. This shows its worth when you embody it, when you practice it so much that it's naturally how you operate. And I understand many of us don't start here. I sure as hell didn't. I was extraordinarily negative most of my life. Once in a while, I still see a pattern or a habit or some thought, but in general, things have transformed to an incredible degree. Now, in order to help some of our viewers appreciate what this insight is, I'm just going to share some of the ways it's been applied powerfully in the lives of people. Dr. Seligman, he's really big for his positive attitude teachings. And what I'm going over isn't precisely having a positive attitude. But one of the things he discovered was people who were pessimistic had basically 200%. They were twice as accurate as people who were very positive in assessing their skills and the truth of the situation. But what he found was people who had a more positive outlook on that same type of situation generally had at least twice the success of a pessimistic person. And you might ask, well, why is that? The pessimistic person sees it more realistically. They're more in tune with how things are. And here's the difference. The pessimistic person is going to take it personally. They're going to self-abuse. They're going to say that they're not good enough. They're a piece of trash. They're useless. They're garbage. And then they're going to wither. Whereas the positive person is going to try and get something out of it. Oh, is this the wrong demographic to go after? What was my sample size too small? Did I train too intensely and I got burnt out? What did I do? The positive person is going to use it as a stepping stone, and the negative person is going to use it as a bludgeon with which to beat themselves. So that's a key understanding to have. What we're going to go over is the power of correct focus. Now, I'm purposely saying correct focus instead of like a Buddhist right view or right thought. I'm not a Buddhist. What I'm sharing is universally applicable to every person in every situation, no matter what you're doing. But you need some kind of terminology. So for this one, I'm going to call it correct focus. Now, that when I say correct, I don't mean accurate, because we can't perceive things perfectly accurate. There's only so much information we could take in and comprehend. But what I mean by correct, it's going to get us on the path to head in a better direction. So let me share some information with you about how powerful this could be. Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman. He's, unless someone crept up over the years that I'm not aware of, he's the foremost researcher in the psychology and physiology of combat and killing. What are the effects? What allows somebody to do it? What happens when they do? What happens in their body? What happens in their mind? This whole dynamic. And I found this to be extraordinarily interesting. And one of the things he was going over was people who, in their mind, they go to battle, they're soldiers, maybe they wanted to get free college. Maybe they wanted to learn a skill. Maybe they didn't know what to do with their lives, so they ended up there. But then they end up in a combat situation. And what he found was people who never conceptualized that they might be in combat, or never really gave it any thought that they might be hurt. What he found was sometimes people would get just a grazing wound, something you could patch up practically with a Band-Aid. And sometimes these people would actually pass away from that, even though there's no physiological reason. And that's a little wild. Now, on the flip side of that, what he found was people who prepared themselves. Okay, I'm going to be in combat. I might do very violent things. I might be hurt terribly, but I'm going to come back and be healthy and all of this. They established a psychological framework. Now, this isn't a thought that happens one time. This is a thought that's been repeated thousands of times. It's naturally how they are. So when they're in that situation, guess what? That attitude shows up for them and helps get things in gear. Now, I'm very open-minded, right? But I read a case that is so, in his book on combat, from Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman. I read a case that is so crazy that even I have a hard time believing it. But I'm going to share it with you to illustrate some of the more extreme end of possibility with this. I'm not claiming that this is a normal thing that's going to occur for you. But there was a woman who was she was a cop. Long story short, there's a hostage. Gets in a shootout. She is hit in the heart and the brain. She wins the engagement, saves the hostage. Couple months later, she's back on the beat, fully functional and back to life. Now, what? I'm not saying she came back from the dead, but back to the full quality of life. And how can that happen? And in an interview, she said, well, she prepared for this. She thought this day would come. She said no matter what, she's going to get back to her family and get back on the street. Now, I'm not saying this is going to be a normal result for you, but it shows an extreme of if someone never prepared. One of the reasons why people have PTSD is because they never conceptualize that they're going to encounter what they encounter or they're going to do what they're going to do. And then when they step outside of their moral framework or their identity, it's so shaking for them. Now, other things like hypervigilance occurs, and I'm not going to go into that. Today's not the episode for that. And I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not a therapist. I have no services that I'm offering. I just do a lot of study, and I'm reporting information to you. People who prepared themselves for these types of experiences, psychologically, physiologically, do much better. Now, it's not just one time in your time of need that you think it, because that's not going to do the job. You need to lay the groundwork. You need to, okay, this is what I'm going to do. It's like, I used to be an actor in high school. We had a strong theater program. And I remember this one sketch for a play we did at the end of the year. And we rehearsed it over and over and over and over again. And so, as soon as one of us forgot our lines, automatically we didn't miss a beat. We just hopped in and performed the sketch, adjusted, hopped to the next line, and nobody could tell the difference because we had repeated it so often. It was part of us. It wasn't something we had to think about and hope would show up. It was something that was a product of our training. And so I'm emphasizing to you, this is not something that's going to occur magically. This is a part of your life as you train. If you're habitually negative like I was, it's going to take some time. I used to support, I don't anymore. I used to support some people, often on a free or donation basis. Sometimes I would do seminars or classes, but in general, it'd be one-on-one guidance. And if they felt like zipping me some cash, that's usually how it worked. And there's someone that I worked with for years and years. And this person, I'm not going to share their story, that's private, but decades of horrendous abuse, horrendous. And when we began talking, and I was sharing some of these insights, what this person said was, well, Shawn, I like how this sounds. I understand I have to lay a foundation. But when I practice, it just doesn't feel real. It feels like I'm lying to myself. It feels like I'm just trying to deny what I'm feeling. And that's not what I'm going for. And if you don't know me, there's another section of stuff that we're going to go over in other episodes where we talk about, okay, beneficial ways to feel things and all that. So I'm not about denial. There's vast understanding and topics that we can share one day on different ways to process experiences. But what I shared in this case was, I understand how you feel. However, thinking about lying to yourself or trying to trick yourself, this isn't a useful way to conceptualize it. A more accurate and beneficial one would be, imagine going to the gym. You don't go to the gym to lie to yourself that you're strong. You go to the gym to build the capacity to be stronger. And so when you're beginning to retrain yourself to have a more useful way of interacting with your world, it's going to take time. It's going to be hard. You're not lying to yourself. You're developing that capacity and strengthening that view. so that you're not destroying yourself over little things. Now, this is how powerful this can be, and this is in everyday life. You could take two people. One loves to be on stage. They're so excited, they can't wait. It's like one of the highlights of the year when they're going to have a stage performance or give a speech, presentation, so on and so forth. It's something they're very excited about. But if you've heard anything at all, people are more afraid of public speaking than they are of death in general. And some people would actually have a heart attack at the concept of presenting something in public, but others, they would do just fine. In fact, they would thrive in such an environment. Well, what's the difference? Well, the difference is, what does that mean to them? What's this experience? What are they focusing on? You know, some people are thinking, they're terrified. They're focusing on, I'm going to mess up my words, or I'm going to trip and I'm going to embarrass myself, and I'm never going to recover, and traumatic things like this. Whereas someone else is going to think, okay, I've been working on this all the time, I'm finally going to release it, yeah! And that's going to really that changes a lot how they feel. Now let's go back to the work of Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman. Another thing he found, and I hate to bring up such a grim topic, but this is something that so many people have experienced, and I just want to share. They also interviewed people who were victims of sexual assault. And what was found was the habitual type of focus that people would have after this tragic incident was different. People who were very, very traumatized by the event, very, very traumatized, they would conceptualize it like this: I'm so stupid. I'm broken. I'm ruined. I'm dirty. No one's ever going to want me. I lost all control. I couldn't help myself. And this would be their narrative. And a lot of times they would relive that often throughout their days. They would imagine, where's the guy coming from? What's he saying? What's he doing? What'd it feel like? And, their body begins to relive that. And instead of moving beyond that experience, it conditions the body to be better at feeling that trauma. So there's a phrase, what fires together, wires together. So in neuroscience, the concept is when you have two things that you're doing at the same time, they begin to get mixed together. For example, if you had your first kiss when a certain song comes on, that song's is likely going to remind you of your first kiss. That's a generalized example. But people who've been through such a trauma, they might not be able to go near the place where it happened, or they might, every time they see someone who wears a similar jacket, their heart, they might start breathing fast, their heart starts to elevate, they start to close in and lose that sense of control that they had. It could be a very terrible experience for them. What Grossman found was people who had been assaulted, who applied different meanings to it. They might say, it was terrible and never want it to happen again, but I'm not going to let this take control of my life. I'm not going to let this ruin my ability to enjoy sex. And some of them say, I'm going to learn from this and it's never going to happen again. Or I'm going to learn, and some of them become martial arts instructors and self-defense people, and they help raise awareness so people are less vulnerable in situations, so women don't have their hoods up with earphones so they can't hear running in the park when it's dark, so the guys can come up from their blind side and attack. They bring them more awareness, more skills, more confidence. They start moving in a more powerful way. And then that begins to eliminate them from the list of potential targets that people would see. If you condition yourself to view things in a positive way, I'll take that back. Not positive, a constructive way. Then having this correct focus, a constructive focus, will serve as a shelter in the most difficult times of your life. I'm not saying there are a lot of law of attraction people, and I'm not one of those. who would say, oh yes, just focus on what you want and you get it. So if you focus on this one person, they're going to end up dating you. Well, that might not happen. But a constructive, or I'm going to be with this person forever, and then that person breaks up with you. Positive thinking isn't going to make someone stay with you forever. Positive thinking isn't going to make someone who's unattracted to you suddenly fall in love. But constructive thinking would say, okay, there are things I can do to become more attractive. There are things I can do to have a healthier relationship. Oh, I made this mistake in that relationship. Here's, well, what can I do to have a better relationship and not be so possessive or feel more fulfilled when they're not there, so there's not so much pressure on them. What can I do? And this constructive view, when repeated, when trained, when it becomes part of you, it's part of naturally how you see, how you function in the world. It's extraordinarily powerful. Now, I'm going to share some more historic examples about how this has been applied, and I encourage you to check this out. So, Nick Yaris was a criminal, and he did very bad things, but he was put on death row for a murder he didn't commit. And he was abused terribly in the prison system. Terribly, terribly. Well, at one point, he figured he was going to die. And he didn't want to die bitter. Instead, he wanted to die letting everyone know that he forgave them. That's right. The guards that abused him, the people who threw him in jail, even though it wasn't him, he wanted his last words to be a touching speech. That was profound. A life change because he changed inside. He focused, I'm not going to be bitter on all this adversity that I'm encountering. Instead, I'm going to transform myself so that I really do forgive these people and I really do care about them. And so when I am executed, I'll be able to share these words and they're going to hear, and maybe it could touch them. Well, long story short, he wasn't executed. New evidence eventually got him released. But that's an example of what can happen. Here's another one. This is a more famous example. Nelson Mandela, powerful leader. He was in jail for decades, not the best conditions. And he realized, I have to change myself. I have to condition my mind. Because either I'm going to die in prison and that's going to spark a revolution, or I'm going to get out and I have to bring my country together. And so in secret, he learned the language of the people who had imprisoned him. And when he got out, he wore the t-shirt with the slogan of the people who imprisoned him. Now, I'm not making a political statement, but in today's terms, that would be like if Barack Obama went to prison and came out wearing a MAGA hat because he wanted to unite the country. That's a similar kind of theme to what Nelson Mandela did. He trained himself in prison 27 years. That when he comes out, he's going to lead his country and bring people together. And he is universally regarded as a great leader. James Stockdale, shot down over Vietnam. Went down, prisoner of war camp, treated terribly. But he was a fan of Stoic philosophy. He was a fan of Epictetus. Now, Epictetus was a Stoic philosopher who was also somewhat disabled slave in the Roman Empire. And throughout his slavery, Epictetus trained himself to be emotionally free and emotionally powerful and to have freedom of mind and freedom of thought, even though there might be limitations in his body and his social stature. He would not be free, his spirit would not be enslaved, and his focus helped train him to live a constructive life, to not beat himself up over things that would happen, to not berate himself. And so when James Stockdale was shot down, went down in Vietnam, He has a very, very short book. It's called Courage Under Fire. I encourage you to read it. But he tells you how he applied this understanding to his situation. Prisoner of war being treated terribly, terribly. Instead, how is he doing it? He's going through his life, applying the teachings of Epictetus to the most difficult situation, determining what's this mean? What's that mean? What am I going to do? And that transformed him. And he came out powerful. That experience was a crucible that forced him to really learn to master the things he had been studying. I have a few more extreme examples because I really want to impress upon you how potent this is. This isn't something that is weak. I was once accused of, Shawn's just one of those guys, he just spiritually bypasses things. He says there's an easy button, you can just ignore everything. That is not at all what I covered. In fact, to support that, I used to think this approach was denial. I thought, no, if I do that, I'm denying what I'm feeling. Instead, I have to feel it and journal about it and talk about it and write it and express it and keep living it. But what I realized is, okay, there is tremendous value in doing this. But if I'm focusing constantly on the shittiest things I can, that's going to make me feel worse. And I experienced this personally. I'll give you a couple of examples before we move on to the more historical things. I recall I used to be extraordinarily sentimental when I was a kid. So if I would see a cat that had been hit by a car, I would think, oh no, poor little kitty, he got out from the house and it hurt him so bad and he's alone and he died without his family and his family is without the cat and, it's his owner, little Johnny, and it's little Johnny's birthday and little Johnny's birthday's ruined because his kitty's not there and he don't know if he's ever going to find him and I would have these like terrible scenarios I would drum up and I would just make myself feel terrible over every daily occurrence because I was conditioned to focus on the negative, focus on the extreme, what could go wrong, what's bad, what's horrible. And I learned a lot from that actually, but that's a topic for another class. Another example I had was when I was a teenager, I was in the basement and my dad was singing. And at that time, there was nothing in the world that irritated me as powerfully and quickly as hearing my father singing. And I would want to hit things and throw things and getting all tense and making fists and making angry faces and all that. And then there was a flash of insight. And I was like, well, what if I don't do this? What if I don't go through the motions of an angry person? What if I just move on with my day and I don't think about this, I don't focus on it, I'm not acting it out? And you know what? I felt a lot better. Now that the true weight of that didn't sink into years and years later. But this is a hint of how powerful some of these things can be. Like I said, many of us have been conditioned to look at the worst, or to beat ourselves up over mistakes, or to relive our most horrific moments. But that doesn't benefit us at all. It poisons our body with the chemistry of stress. Because, why do you think paying bills is stressful? You have an emotional state. You're thinking, am I going to be able to pay my bills? What am I not going to be able to do? Yada, yada, yada. All of a sudden, that chemistry is there, has an impact on your body. Stress brings on most of the diseases in our world today. Okay, and now, imagine you're reliving the worst moments of your life. Well, what is that doing chemically to your body? What is that signaling in your body? Well, it ain't good. Let's look at some more historic examples, powerful ones. These two are very similar. Viktor Frankl. He pioneered logos therapy. It's like meaning-based therapy. And he and his family were rounded up by the Nazis, thrown in concentration camps. He was a psychologist. And he noticed some things. One of the things he noticed was people who lost all meaning in their lives, who said, "Oh no, my business is gone, my kid was executed, I have nothing to live for." Their health rapidly deteriorated, and that rapidly led them to execution. What he found was people who had meaning in their lives typically fared far better. They were healthier, they were stronger, they dealt with it more effectively. They were the ones who'd survive. Even if they were in the camps for years, even if they were starved, even if they were beaten or tortured. They would be the ones who'd survive. The negative ones, the ones with no meaning, would never survive. For him, he would sometimes fantasize about, oh, how great I love my wife so much. It's going to be so great to see my wife. I can't, and he would compose poems in his head and all this kind of thing. And he also wanted to share his insights that he had gained into logos therapy, because he really understood a lot. I mean, he had a manuscript he was working on. He was trying to hide for a while. He came to really want to share this with the world. And he really wanted to make sure that this never happened again. And he had some powerful meanings that kept him going through the prison. And what guards found and different people found, even people who had power over him, was he had more freedom in his heart, in his mind, than they did. And he carried himself with strength and courage. Now, an even Man's Search for Meaning is like 100-some page book. It's not very thick, very simple. But he sums up a lot of his experience over years in there and describes how meaning can be applied to different things. For example, one of the guys, I believe, if I recall correctly, had a dream that they were going to be released at a certain day. And so his morale went up and his health went up and everything he was looking good. But as that day crept closer and closer, he didn't think, and it turned out they weren't going to be liberated, that his health deteriorated, he lost all meaning, and he died. Even though liberation came not so long after, if he held on, kept that morale, and just had a constructive view, hey, today wasn't the day, maybe I misunderstood something from the dream, maybe not quite accurate, whatever, but we're going to make it. If he focused on that, he might have made it to the liberation and been able to have life. A lot of people would focus on the lives they would build. Sometimes people would be prisoners of war and they'd be beat on the feet with canes. It'd be horrible suffering they're going through. But then they would say, one day I'm going to have a farm. And I'm going to plant these crops. And while they're getting beat on the feet with canes, imagine how much that hurt. They're thinking, okay, I'm putting this seed in the ground now. And they're imagining, I'm putting this seed in the ground now, and I'm going to be there. It's going to be great. And that gave them something to live for. It acted as a shelter to help them go forward. Now, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. It's like a 100-some page book. The next one is more extreme, and to be honest with you, I'm only going to share cliff notes of this because I haven't had the time to get through this whole thing. It's like 1,400 pages or something. It's like multiple volumes. The Gulag Archipelago by Alexander Solzhenitsyn. So, long story short, he was a communist who supported the government. He eventually got rounded up, considered as one of the people who should be in a gulag, basically like a prison camp. And he described in extraordinary detail how horrific this is. But he changed himself. He noticed, okay, everything that I did that led me to get here and led me to contributing to my country going down in this direction, I'm going to change. Because he found great inspiration in the gulags. A lot of people would turn into like basically scumbags in this horrific situation. You know why it's very difficult not to? Doing anything you can to gain favor or power, even if you're hurting people tremendously or abusing others, or stealing from people or killing someone for more food or any of these kind of things. That was happening all the time, all around him. But what really inspired him were the people who were moral and good, and no matter how terrible things got, they were going to remain fixed under conditions. And that touched him and it inspired him. And he said, okay, I'm going to stop lying. I'm going to start telling the truth and thinking the truth. And he decided, okay, everything I'm living through here, everything I did that led to me getting here, everything I did that contributed to society, bringing the country in this horrible direction, I'm going to share it and I'm going to write it powerfully. And I'm going to get out. And in his heart, because he wasn't able to write all this down, in his heart, he had over 1,000 pages of super articulate, highly emotional, raw, meaning-filled, like screaming rage about what happened in his heart, etched into stone, basically. So when he got out, he wrote the Gulag Archipelago, and that was one of the major cornerstones that caused the USSR to crumble. Because all of the lies came out, the ideology crumbled, and that's quite an accomplishment for somebody who's in a prison camp to do. Overthrow a great superpower in the world, basically. Now, he wasn't the only contributor, obviously. There was Kennedy, there was Reagan, there was all these different things. There were economic forces, political forces, but that was, at a social level, one of the major blows that helped bring that down. That is a lot of power, and that is the type of power I am bringing to you. Now, again, I'm not promising you that you're going to feel absolute freedom, that all of a sudden today, all of your pains and worries are going to go away. But what I am promising you is, if you make this a part of your life, one drop of insight, when applied over and over and over again and practiced like a skill you want to get better at, it will shelter you from a lot of pain, and it will make your life a lot more efficient. It will help make you psychologically and physiologically more robust. I'm not claiming it's going to make you immortal. I'm not claiming it's going to cure anything, but having guided and trained, I'm not a therapist. I never was. Not a psychologist, not a psychiatrist. When I used to offer services, a lot of the people who would pick up my work were a therapist or a psychologist, or people who had a lot of experience on the path, because these things, they're simple looking. They don't sound impressive until I lay it out like I'm laying out to you how powerful this can be when you have a constructive focus. When you're getting on a path of meaning, this can be life-changing. And the people that I worked with, what they found was they had their vast knowledge and experience, and it would help bring a lot of healing. And they could do things for people that I couldn't. But when you'd apply these types of things, there'd be a strengthening that occurs. I'm not saying this is the ideal fit for every person. And I'm not even saying this is an ideal fit for every moment in your life. There are other tools and tactics to apply. But almost everybody can pick this up today, start working on it today, and a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, find himself in a better place. And if you have any questions about it, please consult a mental health practitioner. Please consult a trained professional who knows things. Don't listen to people on the internet. So that's my disclaimer. Do not listen to me. See if it's right for you to ask your doctor if you should get on a path of mastery. All right. So how do we do this? How do we get on that path? And it's very simple. But it's so simple, you can overcomplicate things. And remember, this is not I'm going to think once and it's going to overpower the results of every thought that I've had for the last 30 years. No. That is not going to happen. If you begin to... Here's the right balance for those of you who are worried about denying something. And this balance will work for most people. I'm not saying everybody, but most people. In most parts of their life. The time to focus on your difficult moments, your fears, your anxieties. It's when you're in therapy. It's when you're having a conversation in confidence with a loved one. It's when you're journaling. It's when you're applying some therapeutic technique, breath work, some stress relieving thing. You're screaming into a pillow. You're doing whatever. When you're doing something specifically therapeutic, that is when you address your traumas, your fears, your insecurities. Whenever you're not, don't kill the rest of your day. Don't let that poison the rest of your life. So many people get into a relationship. The relationship goes bad. It's all they focus on. Then it bleeds over into their health and they start drinking and they're not sleeping. And then they're just listening to The Cure all the time. And then all of a sudden, they're just bummed out and it's hurting their body. And, they're not sleeping. And then that's all they're thinking about. And then it hurts their performance at work. And it bleeds into every area of life. Do not let that happen. Focus on your traumas and difficulty in therapy when you're applying therapeutic methods and techniques and journaling and all of these other modalities. Outside of that, train yourself to look at something in a constructive way. For example, I remember things didn't work out with my girlfriend. And I thought we were going to be together forever. I thought she was the one for me, right? And I would berate myself. I'd go, and I ruined the only person the only relationship with somebody that could ever get me. And I ruined my experience. I lost my soulmate. She replaced me. And I went through all this kind of thing. And it was painful. And it helped nothing. It helped nothing. Instead, I would say, okay, how can I move forward with this in a healthy way? How can I honor the memory of what we had in a healthy way? How can I become a better person so that my next relationship is even stronger than this last one? What mistakes did I make that I could correct? It's a constructive point of view. And you know what? If you think about it and focus on that and make this like where you're putting your attention, insights are going to start to come. Maybe not at that second, but throughout your days, often when you're relaxing, it's going to begin to change you. Remember, this isn't lying to yourself. It's like the gym. You're not lying to yourself pretending you're strong. You're training and getting stronger. So that's what you're doing. You're training this ability to focus and become stronger, more potent, more efficient, more fulfilled version of yourself. And so the next type of thing to consider is if a business opportunity failed. Like, okay, was it the wrong... what should I have used a different demographic? What would that be? How could I determine this? You know, here's a good example. If you're waiting for your friend to pick you up and you're standing outside of your house and you know they have a red car. So you're looking, if your street's even slightly busy, all of a sudden almost all you're seeing red car, red car, red car, red car, red car, red car, red car. When you're looking for meaning, when you're looking for what could I have done different? How could I have been better? What did I do well? Take time to appreciate that. What did I do well in the relationship? What did I like about myself in that relationship? What did I learn from the relationship? You start to have a focus like this, a constructive focus. Well, you're going to have insights. This isn't the kind of new agey focus where I'm going to conjure up my girlfriend of my dreams and she's going to be here tomorrow. That's not what I'm talking about. Instead, it's how can I be grateful for the relationship I had and also the opportunity that's in front of me. Because maybe you can learn something. Maybe you need time off to find yourself. Maybe you need, you don't know. How can I be grateful? How can I ease my jealousy so that in my next relationship, I'm not overly jealous and like stalking my partner's phone every minute. And then an insight might come, well, maybe be a little more judicious on who I date. Maybe it's, okay, well, I have to have some fulfillment. I can't have them be the source of all joy and love in my life because then I'm completely emotionally dependent on them. I'm not secure in myself. Maybe I need to develop more inner security, more deeper sense of safety. How could you apply this to an injury? You know, oh man, I was on a good workout streak and now I'm failing. I hurt my leg. Okay, good. Not that you hurt your leg, but good that you have this opportunity for awareness. All right, now I can rest. Now I can look up new ways to recover, so maybe I'm going to perform even better. Maybe this is going to give you time to work on your some other project. There's so many. Maybe this is going to let you work on your upper body that you've been neglecting because you want them nice tight glutes. Who knows, right? So these are some of the ways you can apply this. Another way you can apply it, for example, very, very good application is also for exercise. If you notice habitually, you think about exercise and you're like, fuck. I don't want to do this. I just worked 12 fucking hours. I deserve to rest. I want to go out and hang out with my buddies at the bar. I deserve this. I'm already tired. I'm going to beat myself up and torture myself. Then I'm going to be sore for 6 days and it's going to fail anyway. Well, if this is your focus, how many training sessions do you think you're going to get in? Probably not too many. What I found worked was I would start to do this. Hey, I'm going to work out after this. And eventually my work's going to be easier. And eventually I'm going to feel better and have more energy and less joint pain. I'm going to look in the mirror. I'm going to be more fuckable. I'll be more attractive. My clothes are going to fit better. Every rep makes me longer, harder, thicker, and stronger, you know? And you start to see yourself. How am I going to look? How am I going to feel? Feel it. And the more alive this feels in the moment, the more you want to do it. And pretty soon, you're excited to work out. Instead of, oh man, I don't want to do this. You know, there are so many different applications of this one thing. You can use it to help build any habit you want. Sure. What's my habitual focus? Prune that out and train yourself. What's more productive? What are the benefits? What is this going to get me? What direction is this taking me in? You could look at how it can ease your suffering. Instead of focusing on how stupid you were, focus on, well, how could I learn better? What could I do? Is there a different way to educate? Like, for example, somebody that really impressed me, his name is Scott Sonnen. He was born with very intense physical and mental disabilities, and super dyslexic, and no teachers didn't really understand it, and people would mock him, and he was bullied a lot, hurt terribly, and he became a really fit personal trainer, head of security for a world figure, established very intense fitness organization, trained tons of people. His instructors trained tons of people, impacting millions overall. Gave a TED talk about turning disabilities into powers. Like super powerful guy. But he had a focus. All right, what's not working? What am I gonna do? How can I head in this direction? What breadcrumbs can I follow? Is there an autobiography of somebody who went through this that I could follow their map? Is there somebody who overcame some portion of my adversity? Maybe they'll have clues for me to follow. And you know what? You begin to train yourself to focus on these things. You begin to work on these things, and you move forward. Another example is reputation. You look on social media, someone says a bad thing about somebody, and they go, oh yeah, everyone's talking shit about me. Who do they think they are? They're talking shit. Oh, and that'll ruin somebody's week. Now, if you take any celebrity, every time they're seen with somebody, they're like, oh yeah, the tabloids go out. Oh, they're cheating on their partner. The divorce is coming. It's like they're having lunch with a coworker discussing a scene. But all of a sudden, this gets all blown out because it's gonna sell tabloids. It's gonna get people to get involved. Our politicians nowadays have tens of millions, hundreds of millions of people hating them, and they just move on with their days. Now, they're not superhuman people. They're just not sweating the comments. They're not spending their days in the comment section crying about it. I'm not saying they don't take things personally, but if the average person had documentaries and whole channels and things organized to discuss what a terrible piece of scum you are, the average person would just crumble and fall apart. But somehow these people are getting through it, and I hope this doesn't come off mean, but I wouldn't consider the vast majority of politicians at least to be admirable folks. But yet they're getting through having such hostility and hate and people talking shit and all that, and they're fine. Why? Power of focus. They have at least to some degree, at least compartmentalized in this way, they're applying constructive focus. Now, you can apply it to your health, your career, your projects, your relationships, your spiritual life. You could apply it to anything. And this will begin to steer you. As you focus, as you train yourself, remember this quote. People do not rise to the occasion, they sink to the level of their training. If you begin to train yourself with excellence in the application of constructive focus, your life will change. You will be more fulfilled. You will feel better. You will have a higher quality life. I promise you that this is, if you apply it well, it will not hurt. If you have a destructive focus, no one can save you. I'll give you another example from when I was negative, because I'm really passionate about this, and I want you to have a higher quality of life. When I was really negative, someone made a comment that was really true. They're like, Shawn is so powerful. And I was pissed off and depressed. That was the last thing I wanted to hear. I wanted to hit the guy. And he goes, Shawn can feel depressed even in a whole room full of people that love him. there's something to that. Now, imagine if you take that to the inverse. If you can focus on love or gratitude or feeling good, you can be in a very dark situation and make it out all right. Like Nelson Mandela did, 27 years in prison. Like Nick Yaris did, years on death row. Like James Stockdale did, years in Vietnam. Like Epictetus did, disabled slave in Rome. Like Viktor Frankl did, years in concentration camps that killed his family. Like Alexander Solzhenitsyn, years in the Gulag. Like many POWs, years of torture. Like we talked about in the research of Dave Grossman. You will get through more than you could if you get on your side. You will get through more than you could otherwise if you align and begin to focus. I'll give you one more personal example. This one's a bit funny. You know, I remember I was at work years ago, and I was tired and feeling a little down, a little headachy, and oh God, I was taking cases of beer. I was putting them on a conveyor. And this was my job. I did it all night. And then eventually I moved up. But I did this kind of thing for a long time. And I was so tired. Oh, God, I don't know if I can pick up another case. And if that's my focus, it just made my days harder and harder and harder. And it was like torture. When instead I'd focus on, hey, yeah, I can do this. You know, I can load 2 lines and be caught up, and I could be ahead of these guys. And, you know, I can get the pallet unwrapped, cut it open, you know, plastic discarded, have this going down, boom, like lightning. Yeah, I got this. And you could start to have fun doing boring drudgery. And, oh, yeah, and then, you know, I'd be talking to the guy next to me, and, you know, all of a sudden, it becomes something I'm really looking forward to. Or like, yeah, now I have time to really think about things that interest me. Oh, yeah, well, that's a good idea. Oh, I want to write about this. Oh, I want to talk about that. Oh, I can't wait to see this person after work. And pretty soon, I was feeling good. I was conditioned. I was heading down the right path. Have you ever felt so tired and drained, and you don't think you're going to survive, and you get out of work, and as soon as you get out of that door, superpower time. You're feeling good. You got a spring in your step. You ain't doing that shit no more. And that is what I'm talking about. This is one insight. You could apply it broadly to many, many, many situations. And it will change your life. It will change every area of your life. Now, a little talk, I use the word mastery, self-mastery. I don't mean perfection. I don't mean you never slip up or fall into an old habit or have a destructive thought or get mad. That's not what I mean at all. What I mean is, so Maslow has a very famous levels of competency. You know, level 1, this is the example that people often use, and I'd like it. I'm going to use it too. It's super clear. Level 1, imagine a kid not tying their shoes, but doesn't know they have to tie their shoes. They keep tripping, and they're like, what's going on? Keep tripping. And that's level 1, unconscious incompetence. So they don't know what they're doing, and they don't even realize that there's something they could do better. And that's where a lot of people are in certain situations in our lives. Level 2. The kid looks around and he sees, okay, I seem to be the only one tripping. Maybe there's something I'm not doing. Okay, that's level 2, conscious incompetence. He's conscious, he's aware of the fact there's something he's not doing. Level 3. If he really focuses, he could tie his shoes, but he has to pay a lot of attention to tie his shoes. Well, that's called conscious competence. He realizes what the problem is, and with focus, he can correct it. And then the fourth step is unconscious competence, meaning it's automatic now. He could tie his shoes and tell a story at the same time and be just as good. Well, this is the concept of mastery to consider. Now, the foremost expert in peak performance, at least for years, I don't know if he's been surpassed, but his name is Anders Ericsson. He's the one who came up with the 10,000 hour rule, which basically, if you spend 10,000 hours doing a certain type of practice in a skill, you would gain so many insights and there'd be so many facets that would be automatic. Then you could begin to show genius level experience. Now, he talked about, well, the best people in the world, like there were violinists who had 70,000 hours, for example. Well, they'd be so good it'd be crazy. But at 10,000 hours of a certain kind of practice, he called it deliberate practice, which is you're focused. There are a lot of steps to it, but you're focused. You're working on something specific. You'll know if you get it or not. There's immediate feedback. You have specific drills or protocols or things that you're trying to do to help correct that. These are some of the ones I'm thinking of off the top of my head. And you do that, and you get 10,000 hours of this type of practice, you'll get better. If you do 10,000 hours of just going through the motion, you're not going to improve. You're just going to get worse. Well, if you start to accrue even a few hundred hours of constructive focus, correct focus, I'm going to call constructive focus, I think, your life is going to change. You start to, over the course of your life, get 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 hours of applying this to your relationships or your fitness or your health or your goals. You're really going to be heading somewhere in a much more beneficial direction. This isn't, for example, another example. If you're in debt, the idea isn't, oh, I'm magically going to stop being in debt. Law of attraction, and zoom, 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 it's coming to me. This isn't what I'm talking about. It's how can I improve my budget? Am I wasting money? Or, okay, how can I make more money? Or how can I make, if I can't get more money because I can't work more, health issues or whatever, then, okay, how can I make this more tolerable? How can I appreciate the level, what I have at this level? You know, what can I learn from this? Can I develop character? Can I develop patience to endure these difficult moments? Can I develop strength to push through when I want to give up? Can I develop humility to realize, you know what? I'm not better than anybody, but I'm on the path and I can keep it real. Can I develop a sense of gratitude for what I do have and what opportunities do come my way? That's a proper use of a constructive focus. It's going to change who you are at a deep level. So many people try and manifest or magic their way out of actually growing and becoming a better person. I'm not saying there's nothing to that kind of thing, but I'm saying it's the wrong, not the most beneficial way to direct your attention. Change who you are at the deepest levels. You're more likely to see broader changes. Remember, if you apply this and be patient with yourself, be kind, you're going to make mistakes, you're going to slip up. It's going to take time. It's going to be messy in the beginning and messy in the middle, but as you get more repetitions in, you will get better. You will get stronger. You will become more effective with this. It's going to start to become natural. And then this is going to be your level of training. This is going to be what shows up in times of stress. A very constructive focus that's going to reduce pain to the minimum, and point out whatever benefits are available in that moment. Even if you're in a catastrophic situation, you'll be able to reap whatever fruits may be there. Because if it can work in concentration camps and gulags and as a prisoner of war and prison and death row and in combat and every other type of horrific scenario, it can work for you in your daily life. I guarantee hearty effort in this is going to be a good step in a better direction for you. All right. Rock on. Party on. This is Shawn signing out.